Welcome to this week's edition of Money Matters, because as you know, I deeply, truly believe that money does matter. Not for its own sake, it's never for its own sake, it's always for the choices that it gives you. And I'm joined today here in Monaco by the wonderful Bishoy. So hi Bishoy.
Hey Paul.
We spoke remotely about something that's, I think, very close to both of our hearts, which is financial good housekeeping, good habits.
Yeah.
And for anyone that saw the first episode, I actually gave Bishoy a couple of bits of homework. And one of those was to look at the performance of the fund. Because could you just explain to everyone what you invest your pension in just now?
I invest my pension in an index fund. So essentially what that means, it's not just invested in one single share, it's invested in a fund which is made up of a combination of shares. And ideally I invest in a global kind of index fund. That means that it is invested in companies all over the world. And the kind of benefit of that is it's a well kind of diversified portfolio. It's not just heavily reliant on the US stocks or emerging stocks, but a kind of nice, well diversified portfolio. 1 year it might return 10%, another year it might return 20%,
yep.
And another year it might return 3%. And then, occasionally it all might be in the negative as well.
Yep.
And on average, kind of investing in one of these funds would give you an average return of say 10% a year.
The management fees for your fund are negligible, aren't they?
Correct, yes.
Well, they're not nothing, but...
They're not nothing, but they're very minor. Because it's a passive index fund, meaning that no one is actually managing the fund for me. No one's trading in and out of the markets every day. It's just tracking an index. And, if someone wants to change the index, the fund would change slightly, but that's about it. So very low fees.
Yeah, and I love these kind of products. And Warren Buffett himself actually says that over a 10-year period, there's not one single stock market manager that has ever beaten an index fund, especially if it's for a pension type investment. A tracker fund, a very low cost tracker fund, I think is a very, very smart idea. And to be returning 10% that's pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. Especially over the long run, especially for a pension, you're going to be investing in it for at least 30 years or so, then it's definitely where they go.
Yeah, and I think I've flat-footed a few people with this, but the law of 72 applies here. So we talked about that last time as well. And what that basically means, everybody, if you're not familiar, is just take the figure 72. And if, for example, you could achieve an average return of 12%, you divide the 72 by the 12%, which very conveniently is why I chose it, is 6, obviously. So you would then double the value of your investment every 6 years. So at 10%, I know this isn't quite right, but the 72 divided by 10 is every 7 years, or 7.2 years.
Yeah.
So to have a 10% return is a very powerful compounding.
Absolutely, yeah.
Focusing on younger people, because that's your demographic, that's where you're from.
Yeah.
You must have had to make sacrifices. It can't have all been, sunshine, roses and unicorns.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got this spare money, what shall I do with it?
Yeah.
What was it about you, your upbringing, your education? Why were you so focused on, I need to start saving and investing for my pension?
Growing up, as you kind of talk about a lot kind of in your videos, Paul, and people do what they're told to do kind of growing up.
Yeah.
Go to school, get a job, all that kind of stuff, which is great, which is how I started, which is how most people kind of start their lives and their careers and that kind of stuff. But I did feel at some point kind of growing up in my 20s that kind of has to be more. And I started looking into more, I came across yourself, Paul, and your lifestyle and your output and all that kind of stuff. So, this guy doesn't work for money. He has kind of money working for him and that kind of stuff. So at that point, and because I have a young family and that kind of stuff, I said, I want to be that role model for my kids, for my family, so that, and my nieces and nephews and that kind of stuff in the future, they can turn to someone like me and be like, how do I achieve a lifestyle similar to yourself? So that's kind of what I want to be for my family.
I love it. You want to have assets that give you income such that you're not trading your time for money.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. And one of my primary goals is to not still be working in a traditional sense kind of in 10 years' time.
Okay.
I do want to, I'm happy over the next 10 years to build up my assets, build up my asset income such that, by the time I hit my 40th, I'm like, I don't need to actually work anymore. Since our last chat, I have opened up a SIP, a self-invested personal pension. People
there you go,
aware.
you got it right. SIPP, self-invested personal pension. In the space of just a few short weeks, you've not only understood it, you've put it into action, you've opened a SIP. Mm-hmm. So once again, for anyone that didn't hear, self-invested personal pension. Mm-hmm. There's another main category called a SSAS, Small Self-Administered Scheme. But the process from deciding, okay, I'm now convinced I want to open a SIP, to actually opening a SIP, how long did that take you?
So the actual process of opening a SIP probably took like 10 minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick. In my case, it did take longer than that. So you should be budgeting time-wise 3 to 6 months. A SIP, which is your pension fund, which isn't you are separate legal entities, but you've got a high degree of control over it. Mm-hmm. The SIP itself can borrow 50% of its value. So if you had 100k in the SIP, it could borrow 50k. If you had 200k in the SIP, it could borrow. So the SIP itself can be leveraged as well. Have you got any last thoughts, specifically for people within your age range, 20s and 30s, about why they might want to get their financial act together and how they might get their financial act together?
So whether you're still kind of thinking about, I should do something or not do something, that kind of stuff, as you're thinking and deciding, I think there's 3 things that ideally you should have. One is, if you're employed, to definitely invest in your pension.
Sure.
So when you kind of invest in your pension, your employer also invests, and you also get tax relief from the government. So it's really a no-brainer. You're automatically an investor just by investing in your workplace pension. And that immediately will set you on a good path, especially if you're young and you keep doing that for 30, 40 years, you're already in a great financial place. And then I suppose the next level after that is when you're trying to figure out, do I invest in property or do I invest in this or that? Open up a stocks and shares ISA and just start putting money into that every month. Similar to kind of saving money every month in your bank. It's not really doing anything. I like to think of saving as money you're probably going to spend in the future, but just put money aside every month that will be growing, etc., to get you again used to investing outside of just a pension, that kind of stuff. And lastly, if you were thinking of buying a house, a personal residence and that kind of stuff, do that. That will also get you on that property ladder. It'll build you that confidence if you don't currently invest in property.
Love it.
Just those 3 things will help you, and then as you're doing all that, kind of get you more confidence in investing and what the next steps are for you.
Love it. I love all 3 of those. So I'm going to go in reverse order. Number 1, buy a house. Number 2, investing other things. Yeah, why not? Like an ISA. And number 3, pension. I think absolutely fantastic. Here's a little factoid for you. Don't know if you know this or not. If you haven't used your tax-free allowances this year, if you add up all of the ISAs you could invest in and your maximum pension contribution, this is a frightening figure, you could invest £230,000 and get some sort of tax benefit this year. So think about that, 230,000. But on everybody's behalf, Bishoy, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the chat, and speak to you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheers.